Okay, this week we're going to take a wild ride through Dada and Surrealism. The first thing we're going to look at is Dada. It was very confrontational, very provocative. It made fun of a lot of the usual attitudes in regards to the high fineness of art. It used a lot of real physical elements from the real world in its art. And the focus was not on pleasing, but really on upending established ideas, opposing like norms of culture to kind of shock people and surprise people. It incorporated chance a lot more than planning. So much of art is about planning what you're going to put where very carefully. And a lot of times Dada would just say something would end up somewhere and they go, yep, that's good, I'll leave it there. One of the artists had a crack in it, like his painting cracked or something, and he just left it as part of the painting. So they employed a real element of chance in what they were doing. They used some ready-made stuff, sort of assemblage art at times, and they actually originated in Switzerland, as opposed to Expressionism in Germany, and a lot of the Impressionism and Post-Impressionism was in France. Their name came from a sort of a common French term. Well, it was said that someone threw a knife at a page in a dictionary looking for a name, and it landed on the word Dada, which is sort of a common French term for hobby horse. And they really liked that, supposedly, because of the way it pointed out to the childishness of their artwork. And it can mean the same thing or nothing in any kind of language. They were also frustrated with World War I at the time, and they were opposed to any kind of leadership at all. A great deal of lack of respect for the accepted norms of the time. So Dada led directly into Surrealism, which we will also look at. It was art as performance, overlapping art with everyday popular culture, even into the audience kind of participation idea. So some of the main artists, the Picabia, this is a portrait of someone he knew. The camera is broken, the gear shift is in neutral. There's a sense where he's saying about this person, Stieglitz, who he actually used to work with, that this guy is past his prime, he is worn out, he's outdated. Very strong imagery about this person that this is a portrait of. And not like any portrait up to this point that you might have seen of anybody. Hugo Ball, reciting a sound poem. It's a way of using non-sensible words, but using them in a pattern and creating a rhythm, and then thereby creating an emotion with this rhythm. Again, it could be a reflection of dissatisfaction with World War I and what was going on, that people couldn't resolve their problems by talking, and they were just battling, and therefore they had to go to war. It's a little bit of a protest against the war. This is I'm sorry for the pixelation here. This is a Hans Arp. What he did, very much an element of chance here. He would stand up high above a sheet of paper and drop papers down, these squares down, and where they landed, he would glue them down. Very much the element of chance. Sort of art that is anti-art and the result of pure chance. He was big into that idea. This is a urinal, a first example of ready-made art guaranteed to offend. It's a fountain, is the title of it, which seems kind of appropriate. Very little artistic manipulation involved in this urinal, except it's kind of turned on its side and there's a name printed on it. But otherwise, it's just art as what it is. Very, very irreverent towards, up to that point, what the traditions of art actually were. Here's another one, same artist. This is obviously a very famous painting that he's shown great irreverence towards. And especially since Lisa is art with a capital A, it challenged artistic values and what we thought of as art. The name at the bottom, L-H-O-O-Q, in French, if it's said in the French way, and I can't pronounce the French, so I'm not even going to try, but please excuse my French. It says it loosely translates. If you say this like French, it loosely translates into "she has a hot ass." So very, very irreverent, very, very typical of the art of the time for Dada. This Hannah Hoke, she puts many, many political images together in here. If you were close enough with the politics of the time, you might recognize some of the images she put in there. People with opposing views were put together here. And the map shows countries where women had received the right to vote, as if to say that women are going to end up cutting into the male culture of Europe. This one, the spirit of our time, mannequin head, empty on the inside with all these other measuring utensils on the outside. Sort of the average member of society is just an empty dummy, and they aren't able to think critically on their own because there's nothing inside, and all they do is measure things. And what's interesting is there's just blank eyes there, indicative of perhaps a narrow mind. This is Max Ernst. This is Chinese Nightingale. Max described his own technique in this way, and see if you can explain this back to me. Systematic exploitation of the chance or artificially provoked confrontation of two or more mutually alien realities on an obviously inappropriate level, and the poetic spark that jumps across when these realities approach each other. Thank you, Max. He's got some, what was common in Dada art, and even in some surrealism, are these like biomorphic images where they kind of resemble some kind of a living thing, but you can't figure out what they really are. Of course, there are the arms there, but the title implies that there's a nightingale in there. It's just in a bizarre effect on there. Who knows what's going on in Max's mind? This is really kind of a really neat little assemblage of articles. He arranged throwaway things into what he considered to be beautiful art, new things made out of fragments of old things. And it's really, it's kind of what would be referred to as psychological collages. Really, it was the detritus of the world, like the throwaway stuff, that he was taking and moving into assemblage art. Very, very different from what might be considered traditional materials, very Dada. Man Ray. This is what were called rayographs, and he used photosensitive paper and exposed it to light and put different items on it, which is what inspired the project that we're going to be doing for this. And it ends up giving kind of a ghostly appearance to whatever he's working with. Just common, ordinary articles put together in a very interesting, unorthodox way. And that's Man Ray, who was very influential during this time of change in art. I'm going to deal a little bit with surrealism now. Surrealism was all about channeling the unconscious. They felt that the rational mind trapped the imagination and creativity of the unconscious mind up into its reasons for everything. It's very influenced by psychoanalysis and releasing hidden things in your mind and the symbols that represent different parts of your life. The rational mind was repressed, but these artists would find their revelations in using everyday materials, usually in pretty symbolic ways. They wanted to, in their own way, express the actual functioning process of thought. There were two styles of surrealist paintings in general. One were the very, very hyper detailed ones, the bright colors, the paintings. They gave the illusion of three-dimensionality, were very dreamlike in their quality. And then there's the other ones that were that group of surrealists that were included outlandish imagery, a lot of collage, a lot of assemblage, that were quite different from the surrealist paintings. But in all of them, they're trying to get at the inner trappings of them, and a lot of automatic writing, where you just kind of let your mind go and you write whatever comes to your mind. And you turn that into art. So let's go to Juan Miró. As you can see, there are just a ton of images in this painting. Carnival, it's a carnival. It's got a dreamlike quality to it where there's different images floating on the ground, sitting on the table. There's all kinds of different images going on in here, very organic forms that could be hard to identify. Doodling, automatic writing. It's chaotic, and yet there's a little bit of lightheartedness to it. He did a lot with the biomorphing idea, where you'd have an organic form that should kind of resemble something in the world of some kind of animal, but you're not quite sure what it is. A lot of doodling. Rene Magritte, as you can see, it looks like the outdoor window of his canvas is on the tripod looking out the window. So there's a lot of confusing imagery going on with this particular painting. Sort of what might be thought of as a visual pun, but still very dreamlike. Are we looking at a painting? Are we looking at the outdoors? What exactly is going on in this painting? It can be very confusing, and surrealism really likes that. This is really kind of a protest against the war that was happening. Back in this was actually 1927, but it's a protest against wars that were occurring. Again, we have those forms, we're not quite sure what they are. Very mysterious settings and almost landscape feel to it, but this landscape is kind of empty. Deserted, but forms kind of shifting and floating. There's some lines there connecting things together. It's very, very surrealistic when it comes to what's real, what's not real. What's from the painter's imagination, and what do all these forms mean? This person wasn't really trained as an artist, but he traveled in Argentina and Brazil and Tunisia, and a lot of these places may have influenced his development as an artist. Salvador Dali, one of the grandfathers of surrealism. Whenever you mention surrealism, almost everybody knows who he is. It's so real, but like a dream. Like when you've been in a dream and you come out of the dream and you go, oh, but it was so real. I thought it was real. And he paints those images. There's some symbolism here of a relationship that he was having that he shouldn't have been having with the wife of one of his painter friends, and some of that works its way into here in its imagery. But very dreamlike images of dream that you and I didn't have, but he must have. Alberto Giacometti, very wonderful Italian name. This again is based on a relationship that he was having at the time, where love can make all kinds of real things unreal and unreal things real. And there are lots of different images in here that have to do with whatever love relationship he happened to be in at the time. The Battle of the Fishes, and you can see some fishes in there with very sharp teeth. They look like they're going to tear things apart. There are all kinds of, there's lots of automatic writing in here, automatic drawing in here. And one thing that he was really, a lot of his images, it is suspected, came out of the conditions he subjected himself to in order to get these paintings. He did a lot of automatic writing. He used drugs and went without sleep and food in order to release the physical hold on his imagination and let his imagination run free to produce these kind of images. He was really well known for his choice of sand. He would throw glue or gesso on a canvas and then throw sand on it and see where it stuck. And I suspect that might be where some of the darker little streams, places in there are sand. His work is well known for depicting rather dark things like massacres and bizarre confrontations and dismemberment. And usually his male figures, when he did have them, were usually not unharmed in his paintings. And in here, the fish here are just, they look like they're ready for battle with each other, and thus the title. Classic surrealist. I kind of think of it more as Dada, perhaps, but it's under my surrealist pictures because it takes a common everyday object and transforms it into something that you would not expect that to be. Like, this is just a teacup and a spoon bought and she's covered it with fur. Very good example of surrealist ideas of symbolism. Who would really want to drink tea out of a fur-covered cup? It's kind of the combination of domestic ideas about life and sort of animal nature within all of us. Max Ernst and the Barbarians. What he would do a lot is he'd paint the canvas and use the element of chance we discussed earlier, and then scrape it off and see what came as a result and work with that. He liked to release his control of the creative process by doing those kinds of things and let what's inside come out. Mysterious figures, we can't interpret what those figures are, with dream symbols. He has that bird images a lot in a lot of his work. Not always explained. Might have been to a bird. He did have known to have a bird pet when he was younger. So there might have been some kind of trauma there. Perhaps the bird died and he wasn't ready. But he does have a lot of bird images in his paintings. Here's Man Ray again. He kind of covered both sides, both Dada and Surrealism. Mannequins of females. At one time, they're alluring because of the female body. At the other time, they're monstrous because of what's connected to them. He used a lot of photographic techniques and a lot of the element of chance in a lot of what he was doing. So it's very like the what is trapped around her head is a cage, like a bird in a cage. Maybe he's making a comment about how our imagination is always trapped and when he needs to come out. And finally, one of the few, Merritt Oppenheim with the fur-covered cup, she and Dorothea Tanning were one of the few female surrealists. You can see that it seems like there's infinitely many rooms in this painting, sort of like the infinitely many rooms in the unconscious mind. It's a labyrinth to walk through, to release different parts of your consciousness and your imagination. She has skirts which are like domestic symbols of living in the world, and yet they're made of roots, very naturalist. Sort of a way of saying your culture is animalistic. It doesn't mean anything. And no fancy apparel can cover up what we are inside. So she's got some really, I love the doorways going kind of back in through time there. It's very interesting. I'm going to take us back to Man Ray. Because he's going to have an example here when I get there of what our project is for this week. I'm going to send you in the mail a sheet of sunlight paper. I forget what it's called. I have it here, had it in here in front of me. But the directions will be in the package, and the sheet of paper is light sensitive. So you need to make sure that you don't take it out till you've read the instructions, you're all ready to go, and we've got a sunny day. So read the instructions, think about what you would put over there. Man Ray here, you can see, he exposed this in different ways. His paper here is much more sophisticated than the paper that we have. But I want you to look at the instructions. I will send you pictures of two that I did that turned out kind of not the way I wanted, but they're fun anyway. And one of them I'm coloring and adding some colored pencil too, and it's going to be kind of fun. So I will send you those pictures. But I want you to read the instructions, do something in the sun that'd be kind of fun, and then I would like you to take a picture of it and send it to me. Also, if you did your expressionist portraits, which I hope you did, I'd like to see those as well. So you have a homework assignment. I don't think there's anything extra needed for that one, and we'll see ya.